Judith Rossell is a multi-award winning author and illustrator. You may be familiar with the best-selling Stella Montgomery series, Withering by Sea, Wormwood Mire and Wakestone Hall, and if you're not, read them. I absolutely love them. Before beginning her career in children's books, Judith worked as a government scientist and also for a cotton spinning company. Can't quite see the creative link, but we're going to find out. She's written 15 books and illustrated over 80, and most recently Bog Trotter and Pink, which were written by Margaret Wilde, and that is such a coup to do that. Her work's been published in the US and the UK and translated into more than 20 languages. Jude Rossell, it is so lovely to see you.
Oh, it's so nice to see you too. Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. How on earth do you go from science, which I think of as a very exact science, pardon the pun, to illustrating?
well, probably it's probably not as different as people think, because science is actually, research science is quite creative. You have to think things up. But the reality is I was the kid who liked to draw, but also was quite good at science at school. And I think we discount the arts so much that there's an idea that if you can do something other than art, then that's what you should do. And then your art can be your lovely hobby. And so I did sort of study science at university and worked for CSIRO for a bunch of years, yeah.
And what on earth is cotton spinning?
Oh, well, that's what that's where your clothes come from. So a big factory that buys cotton and turns it into yarn that goes on to be made into t-shirts or tea bag strings or rope, mops, jeans, many things.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Factory that makes that, yeah.
Have you ever noticed how many scientists are now working in children's literature, like Carol Wilkinson's one? There's an awful lot of you.
I haven't actually noticed that particularly. I've noticed a lot of teachers.
Yes, there's a
There
few
are a
of
lot
us.
kids lit, aren't there?
Absolutely, there are. Now, Jude, we're kind of coming to the end of the first COVID close down, but it's okay if you cry because this is a really touchy subject. Where were you when everything went to hell and we had to come home?
Oh, it was terribly sad. I was in Germany. I was so lucky. I got a writing fellowship through UNESCO because Melbourne is a city of literature, and Heidelberg in Germany is another UNESCO city of literature. I applied, did not expect to get this, but I got to go. I was meant to be living in a castle in Germany for 3 months, and I lived there for 6 weeks, and then I had to come home. And I got through the winter, or part of the winter, and spring was arriving. The last day I was in Germany, I went to visit someone, and I was sitting in their back garden, their tiny back garden in the sunshine, and there were flowers all around, and their pet tortoise had been hibernating underground all winter. And that day she woke up and broke through the ground. It was like a mushroom arriving. It was so bizarre. And she just sat there in the sun, blinking her eyes, about as big as a dinner plate. And I'm like, I really don't want to go home when things like this are happening. But I did. And the flight home from Frankfurt, I'm just going to say, it had 13 people on a 747.
Oh, did you lie down and stretch?
I did, but it was eerie in the feeling, you know. I had that last part of Europe feeling, yeah.
Can you go back? Like, can you go back and finish it, or is that it?
The lovely people have said they're going to invite me back next year to finish it up, but at the moment, I think the virus is teaching us not to make plans, isn't it? And just try and be happy with what we've got. So
exactly. Now, during your 6 weeks in a castle, what were the highlights?
Oh, it was just amazing. So it was it's in a village. So imagine this, a village with a forest, with a river curling around the bottom, a walled village, medieval. On top of the village is this ruined castle, which is a ruin, but one tower of it had been turned into a house at some point and is now the community arts centre. So it had like a concert room and an art gallery. And right at the top of this little tower, which is on the wall of this village, on top of this hill with this view, is this 2-bedroom flat. And so I was living up there all by myself. My nearest neighbour was the ruined castle.
Wow. Could you speak German? Like, how did you go communicating?
Not very well. No, I can't really say much in German. I did a class before I left, but no, I was very, they had a bakery in the village and I used to walk down in the mornings, and I got from pointing and smiling to saying the word geschnitten, which means sliced.
Oh, well done.
I was so pleased with myself. I think if I'd stayed, I would have got a bit better. But yeah.
Mm. Did you get much work done at all, or were you still in that phase of, wow, this is incredible?
I did work. I wrote every morning, and then in the afternoons I went for walks in the forest or little trips to other villages or into Heidelberg. It was just beautiful, and I probably got a bit more work done than I did here, partly because of the pressure, just that feeling of, here's me in the castle, I better get something done.
Exactly. So, Jude, if you've got, I know a lot of people don't like talking about future projects, but have you got things that have come out of that you'd like to work on?
I have. When I was there, I just kept getting ideas all the time, sort of medievally dark, villagey ideas. And one thing that really struck me when I was there was how fairy stories must seem so different to Germans than they do to us, because to us they sound like another world. But if you're living in a forest with a walled village, and there was a wolf apparently in the district while I was there, and then you're walking through the forest, you can easily imagine trolls and moss people and gingerbread houses. That aspect of it was amazing to me. The next village, not the one I was in, but the one across the river, had 4 castles in it.
But you just can't comprehend it, can you? Well, you can, you've seen it, but I'm just going, wow.
The whole time I was there, I was just constantly amazed by everything.
Well, let's cross everything that you'll get back to finish it, because especially the story about the turtle, to see that sort of, or tortoise, the creature with the shell coming out of the ground is just remarkable.
Apparently people over there keep them in the fridges sometimes.
Do
Over the
they?
winter. Yeah, that's what they said. That these people had it in their garden, but some people keep them in the fridge over the winter.
There's a
In the
picture book for you. So,
something, isn't it?
so, Jude, I've always thought of you as a writer and illustrator of picture books, but then suddenly into the world burst Stella, and I completely and utterly fell in love with her. How long
Oh,
had Stella sat in your heart before you started writing her?
oh yes, a while. I have written, in the past, I wrote a couple of, it's probably junior fiction books a long time ago. And I am quite an angsty and uptight writer. And so, and also quite slow. So yes, probably Stella, the first book was probably about 4 years in the making, with me just putting it away and not doing it for a long time in between.
As you are an illustrator, did you kind of draw your way into bits as well as write when you were working on it?
I think the main reason I wrote Stella was really just because I wanted to draw the pictures.
I can see
Um,
why, they're beautiful.
oh, thank you. But I think what happens with illustrators is you tend to get asked to do the same sort of thing as you did last time. And at that time, I was doing a lot of books for very young children, illustrating a lot of books for very young children with cute little mice and rabbits and things, which is fine. I'm very happy with that. But a lot of my ideas were older and darker. And so I did start drawing these little pictures, and I guess I hoped someone would ask me to illustrate a book like that. But they didn't. So that's probably how I ended up writing it, because I could see the scenes in my head and I wanted to write the story that went along with them.
Was it a trilogy all along, or did it go from one story to a trilogy?
It was meant to be one. And in fact, the first book has this one aspect of it, which the way I write is I don't plan. I just put a lot of things in and then see what happens next. And then at the end, you take away all the things that didn't lead to anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yep, I do.
And so I was in that process. And in the first book, Stella finds a mysterious photograph that is not explained. And so I went to take that out. And the publishers convinced me to leave it in because they thought it was intriguing, unanswered question. And because it's got that unanswered question in it, then the second book had to happen, because you can't really leave your readers with a mysterious photograph and no explanation, can you?
Were you surprised at the reaction to it?
Yes, surprised and amazed and delighted, but mainly surprised.
No, I just, as I said, and I gave it to my niece and she loved it. And where's the next one? I said, well, it hasn't been written yet. Just calm yourself. So it's
Look, my
fabulous.
readers do have to be patient. I am slow at writing.
So let's talk about your other work. How do you actually work when you're illustrating for someone else? Do you collaborate with them or do you like to work on your own?
I've never had the chance to collaborate with an author. In the case of the most recent picture book I illustrated, which is this one, Pink.
It is divine. I can't wait to see it.
This is the lovely Margaret Wilde, of course, and I haven't heard anything from her at all. But the story arrives, and then I usually make up a dummy book. This is Pink's dummy book. Pink. That's a beautiful cover I make. And then I draw in here. I draw the pictures that I think would work, and I stick the text in that they send me, and send that off. And at that stage, quite often, and it's certainly the case with Margaret and the editors, I'm not quite sure how it works at their end, but often the text is changed at that point. If there's something in the picture, maybe they don't need it to be also in the text, and so they cut it out, or maybe they need to add something or change the pacing a little bit. And so at that point, there's a little bit of back and forth, but I've never had the experience where that's directly with the writer. It always comes through the editor.
Yeah. What about how much direction, I guess, do you get when you get that manuscript? How much direction does the editor give you?
On the whole, none at the start. I mean, sometimes they might say, in the case of Pink, I did all the artwork digitally for the first time, and I mentioned to them that I was planning to do that, and they did say that they wanted the book to look more arty and not sort of digitally, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But apart from that, they usually give the illustrator a bit of free rein to start with, just to see what you come up with, which I like. And then later on, there might be a little bit more back and forth.
Because I think for me with picture books, the joy is seeing what that illustrator does with your words and what they read into it that you haven't realised. So yeah, it's always interesting to hear what you do. So apart from Pink, in the past, how do you work when you're doing your illustrations?
Usually just like that. I make up a dummy book. I draw the pictures into the dummy book. I'm someone who likes to watch TV while I'm working. So it's very different being an illustrator than being a writer, because I can't do that when I'm writing. But I usually get a box set of something and put it on, and then I just, fiddle around with it until I'm happy. And then in the past, I've always done actual artwork, but now I'm using Procreate on the iPad and kind of in love with that. It's a really lovely program, and everyone's talking about it. It's the
I'm surprised at how many people are loving it too, and not just, little kids, or not little kids, but young people who are more inclined to do computers than we are. Everybody is embracing it. What is so good about it for you?
I think it's very like drawing. So you draw directly onto the screen, and I feel like an ad, I'm not actually advertising it, but it's the Apple Pencil that you can draw on the screen with, so you can draw very accurately. And Procreate itself is very intuitive. It feels like painting, and you can layer the drawing up, so you can, basically you can fiddle with it indefinitely. So you can change the color of the sky, and you can move the trees around. In Pink, one of the illustrations, which is of, I'll show you the picture, of this mountain. Let me find it. Yeah. So here's Pink standing on top of a mountain, and the text is here. And I finished this picture, and there were some bigger trees sort of up here in my picture. And at some point, there had to be more text here. And so they sent it back to me and said, can I remove these couple of trees which were, just here. And I could do that while I was on the phone to them and send it back while I was still on the phone. Whereas
That's
in the past,
unbelievable.
if this had been actual artwork, that's drama. If you have to change that sort of thing, maybe the designer has to get involved. Maybe you have to do the artwork all over again, or possibly the text won't be where we all would prefer it.
Yeah. And
Is that extraordinary?
it's
That stuff
fascinating.
is amazing to me.
And it
It's
looks
from
beautiful, Judith. It looks gorgeous. It's nice to have a sneak peek of you.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy with it. I'm really proud of this one.
Yeah, no, you should be. You've also got at the moment a new book out that came out during the shutdown sort of time. How's it going? Because it's so hard to get into bookshops and browse and go, oh, didn't know that was out.
I really, I feel for this book. I'm so happy with this book too. This is Play With Your Plate. This is my, I wrote this one. Well, you can see there's not actually much words in it, but it was published by an American publisher, and I was so happy with it, but I'm afraid that without being able to pick it up and muck around with it, people won't buy it. So I'll show you. This is for toddlers. This is the youngest reader I've ever sort of engaged with, and it opens up like this, and like, it's quite hard to do this in the air, but like this, and we get a plate of food. I don't know, can you see?
Yes, that's...
Okay. And then the kids can put all different things on their plate like this. That's basically the point of the book.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Super fun to design. And there's all kinds of puzzles. So can you make a plate up of only red food, or can you make a plate up of only vegetables or something? All the way to the end. There's heaps of possibilities. There are more than 4,000 combinations of different food.
And it looks beautiful. It's the sort of book, Judith, that I look at it and go, that's timeless. Like, when we get through all this, that book will, be so popular. It's gorgeous.
I'm really happy with it. It was just like a weird idea I had, and it was I think maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago I first made the dummies up for this, and at the time I had an agent in America, and she was trying to sell it, and I felt that, I'll show you the dummy book. This was the dummy book. I called it "What's for Dinner," and you open it, it's the same idea, basically. It's just different food on the plate. And I made all these dummies up, and my agent took it around all these publishers in America. And I thought they'd be just dying to publish it. I was so optimistic about this. But it took maybe 2 years before someone finally decided to go with it. Yeah.
I find that, I'm like you. I thought that would go off because it is such a simple, clever, never-ending idea that, as you say, 4,000 meals you can create?
I think it was just one of these ones which it turned out to be quite difficult to cost.
Yep.
And to produce. So I'm really happy with it. It's available here. It's in Australia and England and everywhere, but with COVID, who knows if people are discovering it.
But
Play with your plate.
Yeah, because you look at it and go, oh, that looks gorgeous and bright, but you have no idea without being able to pick it up what's inside.
That's right. I think until bookshops are open again, books like this will probably struggle a little bit because you have to hold them.
Yeah, exactly. So, Jude, what's on the cards now? What are you working on now?
I am starting a new series for people who enjoyed Stella. Not about Stella, about another character in a different time. And I am enjoying it, but I'm so slow. So one of the big things I did while I was in Germany was I wrote the first 4 or 5 chapters, and I was super happy with them, and then I threw them all away.
And if you return to it?
I have. So I sort of went to Germany with about 4 or 5 chapters, and I came back with 4 or 5 chapters, but they are different chapters. So that's progress, isn't it?
It is progress, and it's part of it. You do have to throw away so much. With the being in Germany, can you see that German forest and wolves and fairy tale influence coming into this one?
So far not, but I think perhaps a future project. It was it was really extraordinary to live in one small village for all that time and just go walking around every day was an amazing experience for me, really. It was just extraordinary. The whole time I was there, I just felt very lucky to be there. And I'm trying to see it as a really lucky thing, not disappointing that I had to come home early, but lucky that I got to go at all, really.
Yeah. Oh, an incredible experience. How did they look after you when you were in Germany? Because if you can't speak the language and you're living in a 2-bedroom flat in a tower,
No,
who
I
looked
was really I was really worried. I was worried that I would be lonely, and I was worried that I would be scared because I was living in this sort of old house by myself with all these empty floors below me.
and no one
But
mentioned wolves in the publicity.
wolves and mist and um yeah, I had a few moments of being a bit nervous. It was a bit creepy walking out of the house at night because there's just cobblestones and then this big ruined castle and then the little twinkling lights of the village on the other side of the castle. Uh, but people were just so lovely to me. But before I went, people said, "Oh, Germans are not friendly," but that really wasn't my experience. People were really kind and really welcoming. I think possibly because I was there in a sort of an official type of role and introduced to people like that, so people did reach out to me.
Mm.
Um, and I think perhaps I had a good, I was kind of determined to make what connections I could. So with that attitude, you do tend to do better, don't you?
Exactly. So would you do it again if, say, one came up somewhere else? You'd try again?
I absolutely would. It was a fantastic experience for me. It was so much fun. And
Beautiful.
I went on a few little trips in Germany as well. I met the translator, the German translator of the Stella books, and also
Oh,
the illustrator. The German books have got these amazing covers. This is one of the German Stellas. You can see it looks
okay.
quite different to.
Okay. Yeah, it's gorgeous, but I prefer your Stella.
Oh, it's nice of you to say. But I met the illustrator of these covers, and we had coffee, and I spent a weekend with the translator, and things like that were just amazing. I
Yeah.
was also going to be meeting the publisher and going to Bologna, but of course those things didn't happen.
No.
But I did get some. So it was really nice to put faces to names, and so it was a really good experience for me.
I'm so glad. Jude, thank you so much for talking to me today. We could talk for ages, but I'm trying to keep myself to a time limit here. No one wants to watch a 3-hour chat as
Surely
much
not.
as I'm enjoying it.
Thank you
Congrats.
so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Congratulations on both books. Show them again.
This is Pink, written by Margaret Wilde, illustrated by me. And this is a picture book. And this is Play With Your Plate, which is a toddler board book. This one's out. This one's nearly out.
Beautiful. Congratulations. They're both beautiful in their own right. Can't wait to see both of them. Actually, I was hanging out to see Pink, but I feel like I have to go find On Your Plate now. It's gorgeous. Thanks, Jude. It's been so lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Take care and stay safe.